office, please.
You do whatever you want. Do you want to be here? Yeah, sit there. That'd be funny, actually. Dennis! Benny in the house.
Oh, we've got the new mayor.
Now I'm gonna take a picture because that's.
Reclaiming.
All right, good evening, everybody. Apologies again for the delay in getting started this evening. But let's call to order the open meeting of the Newton School Committee for Wednesday, December 3rd, 2025. We will start tonight, as we do every night, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I have my paper here somewhere. So our fifth grade student leading us tonight is Finn Hajdushevitz, and he is a student at Franklin, where Principal Chitty reports he is a student with a great sense of humor who loves sports, including soccer and football. He's energetic, kind, and a very hard worker. His smile lights up our school every day. So we're happy to have Finn here to lead us in the pledge. There is no obligation to participate, but for all those who are willing and able, please rise. And Finn, the floor is yours, buddy.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Finn. Is there anything you want to share with the folks about school, what you like, how great Mr. Chitty is?
You don't really have a field.
Fair point.
But you will have a new one.
You won't be there for it, though.
Well, you can play on it.
You did a
Okay.
great job. Congratulations.
Thank you,
Good
Finn.
job.
Then on this note here, oh, that's
Lovely.
All righty, let's move to our public comment for this evening. Lisa? None remote, none in the room? Okay. Then in that case, let's move to our consent agenda. We have minutes from the November 17th caucus to select leadership for next year and the November 17th regular meeting. And we have policy memos on student fundraising activities and school food nutrition.
I just want to note under the policies, we did send around earlier this evening a revised version that added the one line that 2 members requested last week. It does not change anything about the fundraising policy itself, but there was a line added to the effect of that students are not required to fundraise when they participate in clubs and activities and teams that are fundraising. So that's the only change since you reviewed this last week.
Okay. Is there anything any member would like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion?
I'd like to pull the caucus notes.
Okay, the caucus minutes. Yep, okay. Let me just grab that. Okay, anything else that anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? Okay. Then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the exception of the November 17 caucus minutes?
I so move.
Okay, Rajiv?
Second.
Okay, moved by Rajiv, second by Victor. And any discussion on that? Let's take a vote. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2, yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6? is absent. Ward 7,
Yes.
Ward 8,
Yes.
and Mayor Fuller is absent. So the consent agenda, X that one item, passes. 7, thank you. 7 with 2 absent. 1 second, Tamika. Okay, do you want to go ahead on the minutes?
Yes. It just occurs to me that it's a little odd for this committee to approve the minutes of the caucus for the next committee when this committee, save 3 members who are holdovers, had no part in that caucus. So it strikes me, once again, that it might be more appropriate for the new committee to approve this as it's one of its first official actions.
I hadn't really thought about that, but I agree with you. Anyone else? Okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense. Thank you. So let's table that. Yep. Thank you, Lisa.
Motion by Lisa, yes.
We will table the caucus minutes at Tamika's suggestion, and we can move on to our next item. All right, that brings us to our discussion items for this evening, where we will start with our long-range planning recommendation as a first read. This was presented to the committee as a recommendation from the long-range planning working group, I guess is the technical name, which consists of myself, Emily, Tamika, Superintendent Nolan, Liam Hurley, and Stephanie Gilman. Liam is our CFO, COO, and Stephanie Gilman is our Director of Planning. The recommendation that was put forth was, now that NPS has the logistical capacity to once again start planning new building projects, that we should submit statements of intent to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which happens in a 2 or 3 month window, starting in January, and takes quite amount of time and resources from our staff to put together. The recommendation was to put forward SOIs for both the Ward and Underwood schools, and as a necessary part of that application, there is a box which you will choose to check or not check, which says you would be willing to consider any form of consolidation between those buildings. That is not a recommendation that the group put forward to say consolidation or not consolidation. It was a recommendation to indicate a willingness by checking that box, a willingness to consider. So that's where the last we discussed this as a full committee. Since that time, we have had 2 community forums at the Bigelow Middle School. I would say they were attended by 50 or so people each, somewhere in that ballpark. I would say the feedback from community members was overwhelmingly, almost unanimously, please do not consolidate our schools in any way, shape, or form. And that came from both communities, independent of one another. We then had a public hearing, which we all were at, and I think we heard effectively the same feedback through the course of that public hearing. And it's now time for us to deliberate upon this, decide how we want to move forward, if we want to move forward, and ultimately at our next meeting to hopefully take a vote on whatever that course of inaction or action should be. Did I miss anything as far as anyone's concerned? Okay, great. Any thoughts from the members?
Rajiv, go ahead.
I heard a lot of the comments, and I've heard individually from a number of families or Newton citizens. in both the Ward and Underwood school districts. I guess I would start off by asking the Long Range Planning Committee the same question that I'd asked when we first read through this, which is there a downside to checking the box and opening up the option for, or indicating to the MSBA that we are open to a discussion on consolidation at whatever point it may come up, you know, realizing that it may never come up. So has anything shifted in terms of the downsides?
I would just say from my perspective, I would say other than there's a whole bunch of people saying don't do this for, you know, they're very understandable views of these are their neighborhood schools. No, because it doesn't bind us to anything. It doesn't force us to any action. It just simply opens up the universe of possibilities to sort of the full set of what could the potential solutions be. So I personally don't see a downside other than, you know, getting some nasty phone calls or the like.
I don't think there's any downside. I do think it will depend a little bit on the way the question is worded. I think it's been worded slightly differently in a couple of recent application cycles. So if it says, are you willing to consider? That's one thing. If it says, is this part of a consolidation plan? That would be a different thing. So I would just make that determination based on what the wording is, and we haven't seen the application yet. So I can't say for sure exactly what the wording will be.
Stephanie, do you know when we will see the application?
It usually opens sometime in January.
Okay, because that is a critical difference, because we and I know we've made this statement very clearly, there is no consolidation plan, right? Notwithstanding the, you know, what as is being said. So given that we won't see the question until January, you know, at this point, can we even vote on how to respond to the question, not knowing how it would be worded?
So I'm glad, Rajiv, that you flagged that kind of nuance that Stephanie articulated. I think the understanding of the Long Range Planning Committee that we have been working through our internal meetings and certainly the community meetings and all of our deliberations and discussions has been that we are encouraging the school committee to consider the consolidation. And so if that is and to check the box that says we are willing to consider consolidation, not that we are willing to actually do the consolidation. That is a step that we're nowhere near making that determination. And so I think there is the ability of the committee to decide at this point in terms of prepping for the process of engaging in the MSBA process to have at the outset for the staff to understand whether we are willing to consider. And that is what the recommendation of the Long Range Planning Committee is, to give the direction of the drafters. Can we even consider this? And I think having that as they're looking through and they're filling out the paperwork and doing the extensive review, that's important. I hear you that there's a bit of a question mark as to how the MSBA will phrase it on the application. If it's not in keeping with how the committee votes or authorizes, then they won't be able to move forward with if the question is phrased, are you submitting a consolidation plan?
I would just note as well, before something is actually submitted, it will have to be approved by the school committee at that point in time. It will have to be approved by the mayor at that point in time, and it will have to be approved by the city council at that point in time. So I think if, you know, the form unexpectedly looks different than what we had been contemplating, that is your safeguard there to say that the new committee will ultimately be making the final decision here This is really this is really a direction to the staff to begin this work so that, they know that the committee is at least supporting the months of work they're going to put in on this thing and not be wasting their time.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, please.
So I think it's perfectly reasonable for us as a committee to, when we get to the voting part, which I know is not tonight, that we go with the language that is currently at the MSBA, which is the consolidation. And that would be my recommendation for what we do 2 weeks from now, unless the MSBA magically updates their website, which, we can keep track of and make sure if that's the language. I too don't want to be boxed into anything. And if there's a language that says that, you are going to consider consolidation and that's what we're voting for, as opposed to considering, as opposed to definitively doing, I would be more comfortable with the MSBA language that we have right now. Secondly, I just want to say, because I didn't weigh in yet, that this in no way boxes us into any kind of corner and forces us to do consolidation. So I think that we need to consider that and keep that in the back of our minds in all the decisions that we make.
Victor?
Thanks, Chris. 2 questions maybe for Ms. Gilman, if possible. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, in your professional experience and judgment, if we were not to check the box, assuming that it's the same form, what is the likelihood that MSBA would still come back and ask us to explore that consideration? You don't put an exact number, I'm just giving you
Yeah,
that
I don't know what the
Yeah.
chances are, but one of the first steps is going through an enrollment analysis discussion with them to come to an agreement on a design enrollment. So it would be part of the conversation, it's likely to become part of the conversation, just given that they'll do their own analysis of the enrollment.
And do we know of any, I'm not sure this would even be within your purview, but are there other districts or are there recent applications you may be aware of that did not check the box, and what was the disposition of those?
Yeah.
No,
So
fair,
it's
fair.
hard to know because the conversation between the MSBA and the district is not public.
Fair enough.
So there's an enrollment analysis piece. They may bring it up.
Understood. Thank you.
Thanks, Victor.
Weigh in. As a parent of 2 kids at Ward, somebody who lives blocks from Ward and who moved to Newton 3.5 years ago, partially because of the proximity of this awesome neighborhood school. So I will say that my bias is with the communities of Ward and Underwood in hoping that we can rebuild 2 schools. Enrollment projections look strong for 10 years. I think there are good reasons to have that hope. And I think what we would all love is some assurance that we won't consolidate the schools. And the tricky part is that the school committee cannot give that assurance. Not checking the box does not give that assurance to the public. The only people that can give it are the voters. And I don't see how in a town like Newton, we can go to the voters and ask them to pay for 2 new schools without having shown that we have turned over every stone, we have done a real analysis, and we have built a compelling case for why these 2 schools should both be rebuilt. So I think we have to do that analysis. I think that could be checking the box, but I also worry that an MSBA process, and you tell me if I'm wrong, will be 3 to 4 years from now before we answer the question of what the plan would look like, if consolidation would be in the plan.
It may take us a few attempts.
A few applications, and then
Few
once
applications
accepted,
to be
feasibility
accepted.
at 12 to 24 months, right?
Correct.
So I just think having these communities hang out there for 3 to 4 years is just not the right thing to do by them, but also by our enrollment. So I think enrollment at Ward in particular will be hugely impacted by the uncertainty of 3 to 4 years of not knowing what to do. So I think we should do this analysis because, again, I don't think voters are going to expect any less of us. But I think we need to do it now. I've had a side conversation with the incoming mayor to this end, and he seems open to consider that. So I would love to see us move forward on that. But I think there's just no way around not answering this question and doing the due diligence. That's just my position. No questions, I guess.
And obviously, we look at enrollment numbers every year, so.
And so
Please go ahead, Tamika.
specific to that point, it's important to note that we, NPS, would follow the MSBA process regardless of whether we are in MSBA for these particular schools or not, because it's such a thorough and well vetted and trusted process that we would mirror, even if we were funding and moving forward with whatever we're moving forward with on our own, separate from MSBA.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. What I'm suggesting is that we pull forward the feasibility section. Perhaps it's truncated because we know things like we don't have to consider 5 sites. We know that there are not 5 viable sites. There are ways I think that we could get a good enough analysis that would allow us to, perhaps in next year's application, really know what we're doing when we check or not check that box because we've done the work.
And I agree, 100%. One of the first things I said at one, if not both community meetings, is that it's my most fervent hope that the new mayor, the new administration comes in with some big ideas around this, and that all of the community angst that we've stirred up because we have to, as you correctly pointed out, that all of that is mooted. So again, I'm fingers crossed all around.
Okay, thank you. I think, Alicia brought up the point that I've been talking about in these community meetings, that I think there's whatever path you take to getting these kids into a new appropriate modern school building, you are going to have to travel that section of highway where you say, what is the best path forward? And that might be, we're going to be able to have the capacity to build 2 new schools, and that makes sense, or whether it's something else, and that's, it could look, there's an infinite number of possibilities of what that concept of consolidation could look like. And you got to answer those questions, because there's no way you're going to go out to the voters for 2 debt service overrides for 2 $60, $70 million buildings without having answered that question. So in my mind, I think what you're saying is right. And to the extent you can pull forward that analysis and whatever pieces of it and start answering some of those questions, that would be fantastic. I don't think it changes how I think about this vote, which is acutely, do we direct these folks to put together this SOI, and how should they think about it as they go forward putting that together? I think that's still the same. It lands me in the same spot. I think, again, to the extent you can answer that question over the next 12 months or narrow the possibilities even, hugely beneficial to everyone involved. Any other questions, thoughts on Ping?
I know last century, 80s, we had a huge downsizing of school system. And I'm wondering, Stephanie, you've been in Newton for quite a few years before that.
Not since the 80s.
Not since the 80s.
Okay.
But
Anything
I've heard about that.
Yeah, I know it was very painful
Yes.
for many reasons, not only students, families, faculty, so anything we can learn from that, I don't know if will be good information to share with our, public stakeholders to see what kind of lesson we learned. I knew when I came here, 30 years ago, I read something, said there are a lot of lessons. And probably during that very fast downsizing process, people didn't have a chance to really think through a lot of things. Decisions very hard. But in hindsight, people realize we made mistakes. So I'm just wondering if any case studies, anyone did that, could dig out to share with public. Because currently, based on the emails we received, as Chris mentioned, probably 99, that's my percentage. People are saying, hey, we need to keep our neighborhood school. But I also appreciate Alicia being a little bit kind of a rational, even though you said you moved to Newton because this school right there. You know, it's easy for me to be to put in my, you know, logical thinking cap to say, hey, what about the reality? We all liked our neighborhood schools. So, but we need some kind of concrete, some evidence, some case studies, some numbers, some kind of studies to share with public. Hopefully, you know, people could learn and, you know, reflect and being a little bit more thoughtful and rational, if I use that word. Well, so anything, or Leanne, I don't know if you can share, you know, because
The only thing I know is that there were some regrets about selling some buildings.
That was what I was about to
That-
say.
that's
The
really
biggest
because
lesson learned
That
is
was
don't sell school buildings. Even if they're empty, don't sell the asset. Keep
with this,
them.
you know, again,
Yeah.
they made decisions at that time that seemed logical for the city and the enrollment. But then as the enrollment grew in the 2010 to 15, you know, we were busting at the seams. So that's really the biggest lesson I've heard.
yeah, you're right. I realized, and then later student population grow
Yep.
again, not probably dramatic as before, but still. So in that sense, any chance that you know,
and
10 years or 20 years we might
It's hard to know, and it's
crystal ball?
hard to have a 50-year.
But we do have 50-year views back, and there is definitely a cycle to go up and down, and enrollment goes up and then it
Yeah.
goes down again. So we happen to be in a down point right now, but 10 years ago, we were at one of our higher points. So
Other thoughts? Okay, well, we are going to be bringing this back up at our next meeting. We can further develop any of these thoughts. Stephanie, maybe it would be helpful if we had the precise language from the last MSB
Yeah.
application
I will
as to
double
what
check
that
it.
consolidation consideration. And that would be helpful to have at that point in time. And we will hopefully take a vote on what the path forward is at the next meeting. Okay, thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to our district-wide professional development update.
So while we're getting set up, I just want to introduce to you Dr. Matt Coleman, who is our new Director of Professional Learning. This is the man behind Thrive 25, and he had some partners, but really just knocked it out of the park this year. So you're going to hear about that, but also his vision for professional learning in this new role. So Matt, welcome. Floor is yours.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. So Matt Coleman, Director of Professional Learning. Just wanted to spend a little bit of this time just talking about the work that we've been kind of undertaking over the past couple of months, and then some of the things that we're thinking about moving forward. Really appreciate the time. So starting out with the anchoring the work, this has been a really fun few months for me. A lot of great people, a lot of great work that's already been happening. I've been so appreciative of the welcome that I've received. Buildings, principals, everyone has really been just, I think, excited about the potential of what hopefully I can do over the next few years with this work. So one of the first things that was shared with me when I started was the Thrive Promise, this vision. And I really liked it at the start, but over the past couple of months, this has been something that has been pretty much my North Star. It's been pretty much echoed over and over again, the fact that we're here for our students. And the consistency of that message, the consistency of the theme, I think has been great. So as I'm talking about some of this work, I was going to kind of come back to this idea that regardless of the difficult nature of some of the work, really we're here to improve the conditions for all of our students. And I really appreciated that this was really that first thing that they introduced me to when I came in on board. So my role is pretty big. An aspect that I really appreciated so far has been the collaborative nature. I kind of echoed the fact that it's been welcoming. There are a lot of folks who essentially want to meet. They want to think about how we can improve those conditions for the teachers. And think about some of these larger projects. Over the past couple of months, a lot of my work has been centered on mentoring induction. It's been centered on planning for Thrive. It's been centered on meeting and working with different educational groups in the building, meeting with different groups of teachers. I've had the chance to facilitate with some groups and some other new directors. And it's been really nice just to kind of get a sense of the lay of the land. One of the things that's been pretty important and also echoed has been the fact that, and this is pretty much where I see a lot of the work, there's a lot going on. And in bringing a lot of the coherence together, kind of weaving some of these initiatives together, thinking about how we can roll out curriculum adoptions while we're shifting with new tech-enhanced platforms. How do we bring in new tools such as AI? This has been the part of my work that has been where, for the most part, it's been fairly challenging and fairly comprehensive. My goal pretty much lines up with this idea of bringing a lot more coherence to our initiatives across the board. Definitely appreciative of the fact that we have a district plan and there is a strategic plan that definitely gives a lot of shape to the work. But it's been pretty clear that there needs to be a lot of intentional planning moving forward, considering the schedules, considering all the new adoptions that we bring in. Another core aspect that really we've been trying to focus on is getting that feedback from the educators. What do they want? I kind of alluded to the fact that I've been participating in some of the PD sessions. I've put a little spin on a lot of the different survey tools for those educators, just so I can get a lot of information from them, considering what it is that's important to them. All right. To go through a quick little timeline so far. It's hired in the spring. I started, say, July-ish. Really, my work began in earnest in August. And when I came in, I really tried to push forward with meeting as many folks as I could. August was slower, but that was good because it gave me a chance to meet a lot of folks. A lot of that planning at that time was centered on mentoring and induction. We rolled into September, it kind of pivoted to the idea of planning for Thrive. That took up a lot of time. We're going to talk about some of the numbers and some of the parts that went into that. As we shifted into October, Thrive was still there, but we had to really pivot back to the mentoring and induction program just to keep that going. And then November was pretty much swamped with Thrive. There was pretty much a single focus during that time. Such a big endeavor that we're still cleaning up some of the stuff from that. Meeting with different folks, thinking about some changes and modifications, which I'll talk about in a little bit as well. Currently, I've moved back over to mentoring and induction. That's something that I'm going to talk about in the next couple slides. All right. So this is where I'm going to kind of go a little bit slower now. I just wanted to kind of get through a lot of the big introductory stuff of some of the basics. This is where I'm going to talk about Thrive 25, big core takeaways from that, and then also what is next? Like, what is the vision overall for this role? I feel really lucky to have it, so I want to make sure we're giving it good shape. So for those of you who don't know, Thrive 25, I think was what was called this year. Thrive 24 last year, is the full day professional development day, where we essentially bring all educators to one single school. I'll talk about the amount of folks that we have. We run it conference style. Essentially, we are running 4 different blocks, 75-minute blocks, where we're working with both internal and external vendors to offer different choice options for all of our educators in a whole slew of topics. All the topics that we aligned ourselves with this year align pretty closely with our strategic plan and/or different initiatives that are happening across the board. And we essentially open it up like getting concert tickets, and folks sign up and they choose what they're going for throughout the day. We feed them lunch. We try to make it a day that's pretty fun. These are some of the key words that came off from the day. Overwhelmingly, it was a success. You know, nothing is perfect, especially when you're pulling off something this large, but overwhelmingly the feedback was great. So much so that I think we're already planning Thrive 26, thinking about what we can do and how we can improve it for next year. The scale of this, essentially, we're talking about every employee in the district. So this year we had 2,161 folks attend, which is huge. That also counts the external presenters, but that's how many folks were roughly inside the building. 207 total presenters, most of which were internal, which I thought was awesome. It was a chance for a lot of folks to share their expertise and to bring a little bit more sense of community. We did align with, I think the total was around 51 external vendors. There were a lot of good rationale for why we brought that in. A couple buckets in particular that were of importance to us were supporting folks with using AI tools, thinking about supporting our ELL learners, and also thinking about a lot of the new enhanced tech tools that we have across the board, how we can actually use those more effectively. Throughout the day, 307 total sessions. The one part I think we're most proud of, and I know we have a lot of places to improve in this, is we actually served 2,084 different lunches. We really tried to, for this year, accommodate a lot of different dietary preferences and try to really accommodate all of our staff and be inclusive. But that was definitely an undertaking doing that. Shout out to Panera. They did an awesome job. They delivered the bulk of that around 9:45 in the morning. And they really sent a lot of good staff to help. One thing that I also want to kind of just say out right away, I'm new here. Like thinking about pulling off something like this on my own was a huge task. And there are a lot of folks who were just great help. Tammy at Newton South, Griff and Bobby from facilities, Maria Vitoni, McKenna Bush in our office, Ceci Andrade Barros, and Diana Beck, retired principal. She was really instrumental in helping. So I really wanted to shout all of them out because this isn't something where I can pull off. Like, thank you for saying I was the person behind it, but this was really a team effort. Like I had the great pleasure of working with a lot of these folks to pull this day off, and I'm definitely looking forward to doing it again. And thanks to all the folks for your help. I'm going to keep coming back to this theme. Like talked about this idea of that Thrive promise at the start, centering students. So I'm going to kind of give a little story here about things that worked well, things where we can improve. But I really want to go back to, and I think this is an important part of my role, what is the impact of this work on students? So I'm going to take a little bit of time to talk about that and then think about what happens next. So aspects that a lot of the educators really liked, this idea of choice and relevance. Like we really tried to work hard to make sure that our offerings were matching what folks wanted. I had a lot of meetings prior with different directors and different coordinators to ensure that what we were giving out and what we were trying to put in the program really matched what folks want. And it was great to see that kind of feedback where people were excited about that. It was really good. We also tried to make this engaging. There was a point about a 2 or 3 week period where all I was doing was interviewing and meeting with different presenters to try to get a sense of the kinds of presentations they would have in these short amount of time. And I think we did a good job of choosing those folks. The other part, we really tried to make sure that we had opportunities where educators could collaborate, where it just wasn't about someone presenting. It also could have been different pockets for facilitated work. So that collaboration, that shared expertise, that opportunity for folks to just be in community together during the day was definitely a highlight for a lot of folks. Things that we can definitely improve on. We're bringing roughly 2,200 people to Newton South. So being more intentional and thoughtful about parking next year is definitely on the mind, as is lunch. We tried a different setup this year than we did last year. We're definitely going to reconsider some of that. It was bonkers. The other big area of critique, and I'm not sure how, I mean, I'd love any feedback if people know, but this really is like getting tickets to the big concert in the summertime. I opened the portal at 5 o'clock on a Thursday, and I couldn't open the portal because there were already that many people on the platform. Like it was already overloaded. It was one of those things where people were excited. They wanted to get the sessions they wanted. And by 5:08, there were, I would say, a third of the sessions already filled. So people were there. They were signing up. The downside is that some folks just didn't get the preferences they wanted. So we've got to be thoughtful about those different buckets and maybe offer a little bit more. The other part, and this is one of those that I think really kind of gives my work a little bit of credence. A lot of folks, this is one single day. They want to go deeper. They were jazzed by the work. They were excited by some of the things they were doing, but it's a standalone day. So for me, it was really great to, one, hear the feedback that it wasn't enough, but then two, really kind of distill it and think about where are we going to take this next? What are those different buckets that we really should be, pushing on? And how do we actually shift and change some aspects of the schedule to make sure that we can actually do that work? So that one was kind of a double-edged sword because one, you don't want to hear the negative part, but two, that I think shows a lot of good opportunities for the future. I always want to come back to important part of my work. How does this impact students? So different kind of big buckets when we synthesize the feedback. Folks really like the student-centered nature of a lot of our different offerings. We're really focused on this engagement and motivation. Really was something that supporting students as a whole child was really was a good part. And a lot of folks really kind of gave some feedback that this is stuff that they could have been actionable the next day. Supporting some of our struggling learners or students who need a little bit of support. We have, and it's fantastic, a whole library now of new tech tools that we can be using to support some of the learning and identify some areas of growth for our students. And that opportunity throughout the day to really dig into these tools was great. A couple of our vendors that we work with, it was awesome that they were actually sending us facilitators free of charge, where these sessions were filled up pretty quickly just because there's such a desire to learn how to use these tools a little more effectively. So it was great to see that. And the last one, and this was a huge bucket, we did not, I mean, we tried to get as many AI and kind of newer tech-enhanced tools out there. A lot of our educators are really interested in digging into how we can use these tools more effectively and be thoughtful about more productive uses. There are some areas where I think, we've all been hearing and talking about AI just in general, but really thinking about more, or not focusing on the obstacles, but trying to think about how these tools could be used to shift and support some of our other learners. All right, moving forward, trying to be efficient for time. I'm from New York, so I talk quickly. I'm trying to pace myself. My background, I'm a mathematics educator by trade, mathematics, first and foremost. And I have just kind of an inquiry mindset. And I always kind of position my work overall from that inquiry mindset, just essential questions that are going to drive the work, things that I'm curious about, things that when I'm talking with other folks that these are areas where we should be considering. I just wanted to kind of share some of the questions that right now, when I'm in meetings, when I'm working with others, that we're trying to solve and we're trying to consider. These are things that are driving my work moving forward. There are a lot of technical details like scheduling, like how does an elementary schedule work? How do we shift it around to potentially support teachers in the implementation of new curriculums? How do we find and maybe find some coherence with different types of meetings where building leaders and also then district leaders can take different parts of different initiatives. So these are all things that right now I'm trying to work with different groups to consider, to reflect upon, to then start to plan. All of this, I just want to kind of point this out, and maybe I'm planning too far ahead. I try to be forward thinking. My mind right now is already on using the end of the spring, summer, and going into next year. Like I want to be thinking about how we make these bigger changes. So some of the stuff that we haven't been as successful with right now, we could be more successful with in the future. I'm trying to make sure that there's larger potential for larger adaptive change if we can. So another big one right now, even though those are core essential questions, another big program that I'm part of, and this is, I think, a pretty neat opportunity. Our mentoring and induction program, we now have a whole slew of new directors. We have a lot of math and literacy specialists. We have a whole team of individuals where I want to start to think about and consider how do we actually shift and modify some of our new teacher programs, both right before school starts and throughout the year. This is one where even, today there was a joint instructional committee with some other folks, some educators, where we're starting to have these discussions where we can shift around and ensure that when folks are new to our district, they're a little bit more well-versed in the Newton way. They have a sense of our Thrive Promise, like what it means to actually support all of our learners, to think about all of our tools that we'd have in place. Right now, the program, I think is good. I think there are a lot of good aspects to it, but I really want to start to flesh it out where we're really centering on curriculum instruction and we're really thinking about how all of our mentors, mentees, they can be in a little bit more of a community to focus on this important work. All right. And I kind of rounded out with one last little thing, and these are different areas of conversation with folks. These are, I wanted to share with all of you, because these are the buckets of PD that a lot of folks are talking to me about. And these are the places where I think when we're planning right now for the remainder of this year and summer and for next year, these are the places that our folks are really, really interested.
Thank you, Matt.
So around out, just say thank you. Like, I really appreciate it. At a quick, tight time, hopefully I covered a lot of information. I want to end off just where I kind of started. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. It is something that I'm really passionate about. There's a lot of great opportunity in Newton. Hopefully we can find some good work together.
Thank you, Matt. I just want to remind the committee that we increased through one-time monies only the professional development budget for $200,000 for 3,500 people who work for us, right? So 2,100 come to Thrive, but we do have 3,500 people who work for us. So we just felt like we needed you to know how the monies and the position were, what direction we were heading in, because his entire role is now going to be making those upgrades that we have neglected for a long time in the district. So we wanted to set the tone and sort of, we're heading into budget season. We can't expect different results without more professional training for our teachers. And to see on that slide, the things we talked about 2 years ago, like teachers asking for more training on data-driven instructional design, that's really that's a sign of health for us and a sign of some real opportunity. So thank you, Matt, for bringing that forward. And we look forward to seeing what's next. I don't know if there's questions.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Matt. Welcome. Just one quick question for you. Was there because I did hear that a lot of the sessions filled up very quickly, the whole concert ticket analogy. I heard that from several people. Was it kind of predictable? Like, did you expect those sessions to be the sessions that were going to be the ones sold out, so to speak? Or?
Yeah, there are definitely some sessions. Like anything else, there are non-negotiable, unmovable parameters. Space. There's only so many kinds of spaces that can hold certain types of sessions, just with numbers. So my working theory, what I tried to do was I knew that there were certain internal facilitators who they would have sessions that were going to be pretty popular, and they maybe said, hey, I'm going to offer it twice. I kind of had this running list in the back of my mind of, hey, I'm going to see how this goes initially, and then I'm going to reach out to those folks and open up more sessions. Some sessions I couldn't because of space, but other sessions I was able to. So, as that, and I'm going to make up the dates, but the story still holds. When we opened it up in mid-October, it filled up really quick. I worked with folks, and then a week later, third week of October, I said, hey, we're going to offer, it's been by popular demand, these have gone really quickly. We're going to open up some more. And then it was another round of getting those concert tickets. And it was a back and forth. Like, I had to talk with some folks and said, hey, enrollment's not there. We're going to close yours down. We're not going to go with you. And then I just kept on tweaking it until it was at the end. Like, I actually agreed just because there was interest in a certain topic 3 days before the event. We actually worked with the facilitator, got them on board, found them a space, and those sessions for that person they came in and taught for, they filled up pretty quickly as well. So it was an ebb and flow kind of thing. The unfortunately, some of the ones that folks really wanted, space is going to be a limiting factor for that.
Okay. Thanks. Ping.
Thank you. Matt, thank you very much for this presentation. Very nice. And as Anna noted that we neglected for a long time. So that probably partially explain why so many teachers, faculty members are very interested to see what they can learn. Can I be a little bit more honest or straight? You came from New York, you said.
Yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Long time ago.
And your major work was around the math.
Yeah.
Which you learned already, right? Math here, Newton's big deal.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a big deal everywhere right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And probably you haven't learned all the story about math issues in Newton, but hey, as you said, in many so-called high performance districts, probably math is getting more and more challenging. So basically, my question is, you mentioned that you have some big buckets, and I'm a little bit curious what you have learned from this Thrive 25 with all 1,000 faculty come in, and you interacted with so many people, and you've been working in district for
Few months.
few months, and you still have fresh mind. And what you have learned, what kind of challenges you can see moving forward, and be a little bit open mind and straightforward with us. And I'm very curious about what you have learned and to share with us.
I
Please.
think I can answer that from a couple different angles. I'll start with this. It's a large district. You know, for myself, I've worked in Framingham, I've worked in Arlington, 2 different sizes. This is a scale that's much bigger than that. So the idea of coherence and the idea of consistency is a challenge. This idea of equitable access. There are a ton of high-performing students within Newton, but there's also a ton of students who aren't finding that same level of success, or a level of success that we would find like acceptable. And the bigger challenge to me is thinking about, like, how do we service such a wide range of learners in a district that's as large as Newton is, while, wading through all the different parameters that we have in, different schools, middle schools that start at different times, and, planning that professional learning that would be consistent and available to the educators. Right now, when we want to work with teachers, we might have to pull them in the morning of a certain day, which creates a sub-need. So how do we actually potentially rethink some of those supports so our learning can be a little bit more organic day in, day out at the school level, and ensure that that's going to be equitably distributed first to the teachers, and ensure that the teachers are providing those same types of opportunities to the students. So to me, it feels like, as I'm saying this, feels like a lot of educational jargon, but I think it is part of the truth. Like, we have work to do for equity and access. And I think that's going to be the bigger challenge.
Oh, Tamika?
Emily was totally fine. I go first. All right. That was my first time doing one of those. Oh, but you go first. All right. Hi, Matt. Thank you. Wonderful first presentation for the school committee. I appreciate the work that you've done, you and the team have done, to putting together Thrive and making it as successful as it was. I'm happy to hear that. At the start of your remarks, you mentioned that weaving new initiatives together has been fairly challenging and fairly comprehensive, or fairly challenging and fairly comprehensive. I don't know what I wrote that down, but that sounds like something you said. And so I guess for me, the question that arises is, as we're looking at all of these new initiatives and we're looking at the landscape of professional development, and we know where we want to go with our staff, what is your sense of the timeline that it's going to take us to pick an initiative, and to what is the time before we say, okay, we've hit that out of the park. All of our teachers have been well-versed and well-trained on that issue, and now we can shift to something else, or we can continue digging deeper. So we're a large, complex district. How quickly can we move, and how quickly do we see that needle change?
I guess I just want to jump in and say it depends what you want to know about, right?
Yeah.
I mean, completely changing the entire math curriculum pre-K to 12 is not going to happen in a year, right? Whereas more instructional strategies utilizing AI in a sensitive way, there could be some year-end changes. So it depends how much change management the whole process takes, which change management is not his department alone. So really those it's not an answerable question just as a blanket, like this is how long something takes, because it's different.
Yeah. I agree 100%. There are also certain processes and structures that we can put in place that would alleviate the feeling that these big initiatives are something new. In prior districts, there were processes for curriculum review. There were processes for how we'd support tier one instruction and think about MTSS. And, you know, I think there are a lot of aspects to that here. There are a ton of folks who are part of that work, but there does need to be some work in coherence and work on that adaptive change in the routines and those structures. And that, I think, it alleviates some of the stress where these things feel so big because they become a little bit more routine. They become a little bit more part of how we do our work and how we think about doing our work. So right now, my interest lies more in that. I find myself in more conversations, even though I know that we're talking about a curriculum adoption, I want to hear about schedules. I want to know about access to teachers. I want to know about who I would have to have access to teachers. How often? Like, what are meetings? How do they entail? Like, how do we actually work with building-based leadership also? Like, they need to be part of these curriculum adoptions. So I find myself thinking more about those technical parts so we can create that rhythm for how we actually do the work so that these initiatives feel as though they're a little bit more manageable.
I also just want to say that our surveys over the last 2 years have indicated that because we don't have the coherence, everything feels like a big initiative, like
That's right.
you get this big training and then you don't get anything, and then you're expected to implement whatever it is. With a long range plan, and we have a current 5-year cadence, people know what's in the plan. There's no new stuff. There's not like, if you're going to get a new curriculum, that's going to be the new thing that you're going to contend with. And we're going data-driven instruction and strategies. That's been the case for 2 years and will continue for the remainder of the plan. So it may be a lot of new because we actually have structures to do it in, but it should persist. You're going to hear some similar topics for the next 5 thrives, right? Like, if we're doing a good job, we should be cycling people through the same types of training. Mentoring and induction should have a predictable cadence to it and shouldn't change every year. So I think we're building that system now.
So it sounds as though there is something in terms of the consistency of the training, of the professional development, and its implementation over years, which gets around and overcomes some of the set challenges that we have just by default of the fact that we only have those limited times to do the professional development, which is something that we've heard a lot about just from the staff and others.
The Thrive feedback that I shared at the end, where it was, you know, this is not deep enough. I mean, that's something that you could probably use as the tagline for a lot of the PD, because it's not coherent. It's not something that we've been able to organize as well as we could. And I will say this, there's phenomenal work happening across the board. There's great PD happening across the board. It's not that I'm saying that's not of good quality. What I'm saying is we have to, that same way I said about the Thrive Challenge for our students, we have to make sure we have good equitable access for all. That's good, robust. That's how we have to think about it for our educators. Like, how are we supporting them in their learning? How are we actually giving them that opportunity to dig in a little bit deeper so that these one-off days build that excitement, that builds that kind of that fervor for something new. I hadn't thought about that. It creates a different sense of community. So that actually adds on as opposed to just being that one day.
Thank you.
Emily?
So first of all, I just wanted to say thank you and welcome.
Thanks.
I as another fellow former New Yorker,
Nice.
welcome. I just want to say the importance of your role cannot be understated. I've watched over the last 20 years professional development basically dying by a death of 1,000 cuts. And just the plan that you have laid out, the coherence, the timeline, and the, what's the word I'm looking for? Steeped in reality, I think is probably the phrase that I've been looking for. It is refreshing, and I am thrilled that you're here. Thank you.
I'm excited to hear.
Rajiv?
Welcome. Third New Yorker in 3 days after the Giants,
Started
the
here.
Celtics, hosting the Knicks, and now you.
Yeah.
So welcome.
You should.
So I was very happy to hear the couple of things you brought up in terms of challenges, because I think they've been consistent challenges for many years. One is the consistent delivery of education, which Anna has been trying to tackle and has made progress on over the last couple of years. The other is sharing of best practices, which as a special education parent, I can tell you is something that has always been a challenge, because when someone figures out something good at one school, it doesn't necessarily catch on at others, and that's always come up many times. A couple of thoughts, and this is going to matter more, I think, for when you next come up in front of the new school committee and during the budget process. But when we think about a district like ours, large, diverse, many schools, which add to the complexity you have to deal with, along with schedules and so on, I think what would be helpful is, in addition to the topics you listed, it was great to see what was of interest to our educators, maybe breaking down the delivery. So we have that combination, as always, of kind of formal, kind of classroom-based training. We have more hands-on training where an educator might go into a different classroom to learn about how, a particular, particular thing, topic is taught, or a particular type of student can be best supported. Like there's that. There's the ongoing mentoring, and I know you're already tackling that in some detail. And then finally, online or self-paced education, right? So I think what would be helpful when it comes to budget time is to lay out, like, here's what we're doing in each of those categories, or whichever categories you think make sense.
Yep.
And how we're trying to get that professional development out to as many of our educators and staff as possible. And that just may be helpful also in articulating, here's why we need the money, and we're not just like Thrive 25 was a huge success, confident Thrive 26 will be as well, but we're doing a full court press in terms of trying to get this out.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's a good suggestion. Obviously, new districts, it's a new budget cycle. Had my first meeting yesterday. So the goal would be to start to be a little bit more where the rubber meets the road with the planning. But for me, that process started yesterday. So as I start to learn more of the ins and outs and thinking about what's available, I think that information will be more refined. I definitely have some ideas. There are simple structures that we could put in place that can be helpful, but I've got to make sure I'm weighing it against what's practically possible in a school day, as well as monetarily and budget-wise. Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Did you want to say something, Victor? Okay.
Well, Dr. Coleman, first of all, welcome. Good to see you again.
How are you?
Sad that you left Arlington, but glad you're here.
Great to see you as well. We've crossed paths before.
Yes.
Yes.
Professionally. One's more just of a comment, one's just more of a question. So on your, you had that third or fourth end slide that says support for struggling learners and the SPED needs. First of all, thank you for even thinking about our SPED community.
Yep.
Those teachers, were those teachers that were gen ed teachers? Are these special ed teachers, a mix of the folks? What was roughly, I guess, the folks who are being trained on the assessment data in that?
So when we offer Thrive, so I'm going to answer it in two ways. When we offer Thrive, part of the overall registration process is that we open up courses to everyone. Yeah. So you have a whole mixture of folks across the board. Presenters know this. Some presenters will have recommendations for this is really the population that should be coming here, but we don't put any gates in that. So on Thrive, it's great for that. It's great to open up the doors of possibility and really to get that PD out there to everybody. We do want to be thoughtful about, and this was even part of a meeting I was in this morning, ensuring that PD that we offer across the board is not only just for if we have a curriculum adoption, if we have some work, it's not just for the general educators, it's for all the other, and I'm gonna not just include SPED, special ed, all the other departments which might be supporting in a tier 2 or tier 3 fashion of our students, including SEL. Like, we want to ensure that those folks actually have an awareness of what that program is. And, for some of them, that might be delivering a tier one experience for our students. And I want to make sure that they have access to that professional development as well. That's when I talk about scheduling, when I talk about trying to find more organic day in, day out opportunities, that's kind of what I'm alluding to without getting into a lot of the specifics.
Understood.
I
Okay,
think
thank
that's a
you.
great question.
And another one, I think it's more of a, we sort of touched on it in the previous meeting, but more of a, just a general comment. I think I love the idea there's, as you were saying, Dr. Nolan, that there's a more predictable 5-year cadence of things. I think the inherent tension that we're going to all be dealing with in the coming years is going to be, especially with math in question, the speed with which we're able to do that change, right? The classic sort of 5 years is great, but my kid's out of high school by 5 years, right? That tension against making sure that we're not overwhelming the teachers in terms of the amount, like you said, there's a lot that's going on here, and how do we balance that learning pace with, frankly, I think a demand by the community to be even more accelerated in speed and pace, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think, for me, that question also depends on the level, the grade bands you're talking about. For elementary school, we really have to be thoughtful because those folks are asked to teach a lot of content, different areas. So that might look a little different in terms of that speed, that pace for high school. You could specialize a little bit more, not only just in math, but within underclassmen, upperclassmen. You could be able to focus that PD and that sport in there a little bit differently. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks. I really appreciate the time, all.
Thanks, Matt.
Great seeing you.
All right, let's go to our next discussion topic, which is kindergarten aides. So just the context here, as I think pretty much everyone is aware at this point, when Newton implemented full-day kindergarten in 2019, there was an agreement made between the Newton Teachers Association and the school committee at that time that there would be a full-time aide in every classroom with 14 or more students. In 2023, along with various other budget cuts, that policy was changed to where there would be a full-time aide in certain larger classrooms and at least a half-time aide in every classroom, but that 14 student limit wasn't applicable. That decision went back and forth between the Newton Teachers Association and the school committee, ended in arbitration where an arbitrator ruled that the district did have to restore the policy of a full-time aide for any classroom with 14 or more, kindergarten classroom with 14 or more students. The school committee at that time appealed to the Massachusetts Superior Court, and in November 12th, the Massachusetts Superior Court ruled that we did indeed have to comply with the arbitrator's decision of having a full-time aide in every kindergarten classroom with 14 or more students. The school committee met in executive session the following week, I believe it was, and voted unanimously at that point in time to not further appeal and to direct the superintendent and the administration to implement the arbitrator's decision as quickly as possible. We estimated the costs of the change in policy to be $560,000 for this current school year, assuming every one of those aides was hired by the start of school in January after break, and the cost for the next school year at approximately $1 million. There is some good news that some of us have been in discussion with the incoming mayor and his team, and he has agreed to fund the $560,000 of costs for this current school year, and that will not be a negative impact to our budget for this current school year. And he, in a discussion, has given me the permission to share that with all of you. So this will obviously be an ongoing expense of the district, and that will be wrapped into the budget discussions that the new committee will take up in just a matter of months. Did I miss anything?
Nope.
Okay. With that,
We're really grateful to have
Yeah,
that
and
knowledge.
Yes, thank you. And we are,
Attendance blood pressure down quite a bit.
we appreciate the incoming Mayor Laredo for making that pledge to the committee. Any discussion, thoughts? I believe we have to formally vote this in open session as it was, a change in policy based on this legal process. So before we do that, if there's any questions okay, Alicia,
Going to motion, should I motion?
the floor is yours.
To accept the arbitrator's decision and not further appeal kindergarten aides with implementation as quickly as possible.
Okay. Moved by Alicia, second by Victor. Okay, any further discussion on that? Let's take a vote. Ward 1?
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3?
Yes.
Ward 4?
Yes.
Ward 5?
Yes.
Ward 6 is absent. Ward 7?
Yes.
Ward 8?
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller is absent. That is 702 absent. And thank you, everyone. We can move on to our final item, which is salary recommendations for our non-aligned staff. For those of you not aware, non-aligned staff refers to effectively all of our employees who are not governed by a collective bargaining agreement. This was just discussed in in executive session prior to this meeting. There was a recommendation put forth by the administration that we apply COLAs of 3.25% to non-aligned staff. That is reflective of the work these folks do. It's reflective of the cost of living and inflation. It's reflective of and mirrors the 3.25% that is in the NTA collective bargaining agreement and other collective bargaining agreements. However, they do have an incremental 75 basis point increase midway through next year, which would not apply to the non-aligned staff here. The committee voted in executive session to accept that recommendation and subsequently to apply that same 3.25% to the superintendent as well, who is our only employee. However, there was a lot of discussion around the concept of providing some form of or injecting some concept of merit into this decision. I think, sort of the consensus we landed at was this wasn't something we really could do or do appropriately for this current discussion, but it's something that I think would be, I think we all agreed would be useful for the incoming committee to think about for the next year as to how would you construct something that would appropriately consider the concept of merit in future COLA decisions for non-aligned staff. Did I capture that correctly? I think as well in talking about the superintendent in particular as our only employee, there was some discussion around we just extended the superintendent's contract in the spring. Yeah, in the spring. And with that, we changed some of the economic terms. And, that was certainly at that time, and it was noted, but, sort of reiterated amongst us that, that was a strong statement of support and a recognition of the work you've been doing. And I think everyone, just wanted to make sure that was noted.
Thanks.
Any other? Tamika, go ahead.
I'll say, there was one other piece that we discussed with regard to the superintendent's, salary increases, vis-a-vis tying those potential increases to, performance reviews and perhaps encouraging the next school committee to take up that discussion concurrent with or shortly thereafter, your, review. So that's one thing I don't.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't say that explicitly, so that's fair. Yep. Any other? Okay. So we had two votes, which I believe we also have to do an open session. One was on non-aligned staff, not including the superintendent. I don't know if someone would like to.
I move to accept the superintendent's proposal to increase non-aligned staff by 3.25%.
Okay. Is there a second to that? Okay.
Victor.
Victor. Alicia, moved by Victor, second by Victor.
By Alicia, yeah.
Any discussion on that motion? Let's take a vote. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2 is yes. Ward 3.
Yes.
4. Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6 is absent. Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 8.
Yes.
And Mayor Fuller is absent, so that is 702. And then we had a separate vote on the superintendent, which I'll put that forward because I have the language. So move to increase the superintendent salary by a 3.25% COLA, with noting an encouragement for the incoming committee to introduce a concept of merit for both the superintendent and non-aligned staff. And that's the end of the motion, but that could take, the form. Again, I think this is something you got to think real hard about. It could look a lot of different ways, and just not something we could really tackle at this moment.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion?
I think we also mentioned that the merit system for the non-aligned staff, I don't know, technically is not under school committee, but we're encouraging the incoming school committee to take this concept than doing anything specific policies. So I want to make acknowledgement on that.
Okay. Thank you. Rajiv?
And while I agree with Chris, your comments about Dr. Nolan's performance and indicating the kind of reflecting her performance in compensation and changes to compensation. I made the point in closed session, and we'll make it again, that in terms of timing, I think the recommendation for Dr. Nolan specifically would be better made after a performance review in I think 4 or 5 months from now. So by the next school committee.
Okay. Victor?
And just to follow up on Member Parkar's comment, I think another important consideration, I think, is as we see who as a new mayor comes into play and has their understanding of what they're going to allocate towards the school budget in the future, that will also be a richer time when we'll have more information to evaluate the merit increases at that juncture.
Okay. Okay. No other discussion on that motion. Let's take a vote. Ward 1.
No.
Ward 2. Yes. Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6 is absent. Ward 7.
Yes.
Ward 8.
Yes.
Okay. And Mayor Fuller is absent. So that is 6-1-2 absent. Okay. That concludes our agenda for this evening, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. I sure can.